For my presentation, I read the article Oryx&Crake, The New Nostalgia for Meat. It's written by Jovian, Parry, University of Canterbury. My name's Hillary Porter, and I'm presenting this for Post-Apocalyptic Literature, Class 6830. Oryx&Crake, Identifying Shifting Attitudes Towards Meat. Atwood herself recalls noting with alarm that trends derided 10 years ago as paranoid fantasies have become possibilities and then actualities. This was taken from one of the prefaces from one of the editions of her book, and this basically is posited in the article to show that Atwood, her works in general, not just this one, resonate with us because she so accurately reflects society's tendencies and attitudes and all these trends, whether she means to or not. She's almost like she's got a crystal ball. So it's not unheard of to look at her works of fiction to kind of figure out, where could we go as a society if we keep up current trends. And what this article does is basically use Oryx&Crake as a way to check what's going on now and see how it compares and see if it lines up. And of course it does. Introduction. Why meat? In 1990, anthropologist Nick Feeds published a study called Meat, a Natural Symbol. It's a study arguing that meat symbolizes man's dominion over nature. So in his study, he looks at literature, statistics, and qualitative interviews, and comes to the conclusion that there is a turbulently decline in the reputation of meat. The process of obtaining meat becomes hidden due to social disapproval. Open meat markets are reassigned to unmarked buildings, meat packaged in such a way to obscure its violent origins. So we want our ribs, nice and neat in the package with cellophane. We don't want to, some of us don't want to go and rip open a pig carcass and get our ribs from there, right? It's not as savory as an option. More complex reasons for meat. Postmodernity trends suggest a more complex reasoning behind our love for meat. Though modern society has caused the meat market to become hidden, there are signs of the killing and consuming of animals also being valorized in recent years. So basically, in opposition to the 1990 research by Nick Feeds, we're seeing that there's actually signs of us going back towards the direction of valorizing meat, of being positively oriented with its origin. Human-animal relations are particular relevance in Oryx&Crake. Ruminations on the edibility of human and non-human animals alike suffuse the narrative, with the story's main character constantly under the threat of being eaten himself. Reminiscing about meat in Oryx&Crake. Characters in Oryx&Crake covet meat. The novel begins with Jimmy's first memory, which is that of burning livestock that has been purposefully infected in order to drive up market prices. Nostalgic fetishization of meat is a term used in my article that describes this fascination with this almost imaginary golden past where meat was aplenty. Natural meat, that is, was abundant. The book depicts Jimmy's generation as impatient with the adults that reminisce about the good old days when meat was plenty and the caps weren't melted. Yet Jimmy is nostalgic for real meat. Historically, frequently consuming meat is for those with wealth and power. Meat, blood, power. Okay, meat is to blood is to power. Think of how the Irish are referred to as potato eaters and the British are beef eaters and the connotations related to that. One group is conquered and the other is the conqueror. Okay, I've got a picture of the prince and the pauper, right? I would feel more comfortable calling a Britishman a beef-eating Britishman than I would feel comfortable Calling an Irishman a potato eater, something about that just has a negative connotation to me. It is bloodiness of meat that helps perpetuate its prestige. In a society in which property and power are inherited through bloodiness, a food so rich in blood can itself come to be a transmitter of power. Although the act of eating meat can be seen as a powerful assertion of human supremacy and dominance over non-human animals in the natural world, thus serving to maintain this distinction, it simultaneously blurs it. Meat for power parallels in Oryx&Crake. So let's look at this idea of meat being power in Oryx&Crake. Fid's theory that human domination of the non-human world is falling out of favor certainly rings true, and at first glance, Atwood's satire seems to be a part of this suspicion of untrammeled human domination of nature. The meat-loving characters of Oryx&Crake positively revel in their control over and manipulation of nature, from pagoons carrying human organs to energy-sensing algae wallpaper that changes color to complement one's mood. Oryx&Crake is full of examples of scientists absurdly and dangerously playing God. And as you can see, I have some fan art of a pagoon. One aspect of viewing this novel through the lens of its relation to meat is the shades of authenticity of the meat. So we have a spectrum of worst to best. The bottom of that would be soya boy burgers that are made of soy, and we know that those aren't acceptable because the boys literally groan when they see there's no meat available for the month. Chicken knobs are about mid-range. They're your Honda of their meat group, okay? It's like a meat tuber. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. It's what you take most often if you feel the craving for meat, but they're pretty bland. It doesn't have that gamey taste, I guess you'd say. I guess that they're wanting. Meat at Crake's school would be the top of that. That would be the Japanese beef, right? But Jimmy describes as being as valuable as diamonds. And we also know there is a distinct disdain for vegans and vegetarians within the novel by the treatment of the characters. God's gardeners are portrayed as idiots. They try to liberate the chicky knobs who can't walk, and Jimmy's roommate, who is pretty much painted to be a lunatic. At the bottom, you'll see a picture of Frank from Everybody Loves Raymond and his reaction to being served a tofu turkey on Thanksgiving. Let's look at the relations to meat in the characters. Okay, we have Jimmy. He loves real meat. He's impressed by Crake's access to it. Oryx associates meat with Western carnocentrism, basically the West being a carnivore. She avoids the pepperoni on her pizza. She refers to the child pornography cameraman who smelled too strong because he was a meat eater. He ate so much meat. Oryx and the other children are referred to as delicious midgets, so pretty much giving them nicknames as if they were edible. Children of Crake, or rather children of Oryx&Crake. The children of Oryx are ordered to avoid all meat but fish. Atwood paints vegetarianism as being as irrational and unsustainable as non-eating through the helplessness and non-human qualities of the Crakes. All right, let's talk about the shifting attitudes of meat in our own society. Robert Kolofsky's example of 19th century cookbook that contains an excerpt in regards to a recipe where you roast the duck alive. Okay, so this is talked about or referenced in my article. I'm not going to read it word for word, but it's really disturbing, so I'll spare you the details. Maybe inbox me and I'll give it to you. Also, according to Kolofsky, I hope I'm saying that right, probably not, beef's popularity has declined by 50% in Britain. French slaughterhouses, on the other hand, were banished from the public eye from the end of the 19th century onward. So that is within the same century as the half-alive, half-dead duck roast, and that's how quickly things begin to change when it comes to our views of violence and getting our meat. Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk about gastronomy's role in analyzing Oryx&Crake's relation to meat. Our society is slowly reorienting themselves to meat's origins. So we're going to first look at gastronomy in our own real world. Atwood's ideas resonate so strongly because they are rooted in real recent trends in gastronomy. And gastronomy, by the way, is the practice or art of choosing, cooking, and eating good food. Animals are the absent referent, meaning the part of the process that is where the animal meets the violence and has been obscured from us. So this violent getting of the meat, as I've said before, is what they call the absent referent. But the absent referent is being reinstated, according to this author. He gives 4 examples of how our gastronomy is turning back to reinstating the absent referent. Jason Young, Canadian filmmaker, did a documentary called Animal, Friend, or Food. Michael Pollan, a journalist, did an article called Power Steer. And there's a dish called foie gras, and Jamie Oliver's Jamie's Fowl Dinners. And I'll explain all 4 of these on the next slide. Okay, so let's look at these 4 examples of gastronomy showing us going back to the roots of where our meat comes from, unveiling the violent beginnings of our yummy meat. Animals, Friend or Food, documentary by Jason Young. So he makes a documentary where he goes on a farm and he has to live there, bond with the animals, and he has to kill his own meat if he's going to eat meat. That was my cat, by the way. New York Times article, Power Steer by Michael Pollan. He wrote an article where he adopts a calf and he sees it through the meat packing process from beginning to end. I don't know if I want to read about that, but I mean, I'm sure it's definitely facing reality. Next, a photo of a goose liver of a force-fed goose, a luxury food called foie gras. Basically, you take a goose and you feed it almost to the point of death, and then you rip out its liver and eat it. So yummy. And not a vomit everywhere. Ugh. And then fourthly, we have Jamie Oliver's Jamie's Fowl Dinners. Fowl being a play on the word fowl, F-O-U-L, because what he does is he kills a chicken in front of a live audience, cooks it, and then eats it. So you should go online and check out some of the feedback from that. He caught a lot of hell for that. Oryx&Crake, meat a symbol of power alone? As in real life, the attachments, the relations, viewpoints that the characters have with meat and their society in general is multi-layered and ambiguous, just like with ours. Craker's aversion to meat demonstrates the non-human aspect of vegetarianism while also pointing to racial identity associated with meat. So remember, Irish potato eaters and the British beef eaters? Though not a proponent of vegetarianism, Atwood acknowledges the predatory nature of Western culture through Oryx. So she's willing to give credence to the other side of the vegan argument. Atwood has definitely identified the burgeoning nostalgia for meat that has recently become so apparent and contextualized it with a consumer-driven, risk-reflective near-future society of our own devising, thus illuminating the issue all the more clearly. That's the takeaway here. Pretty much what I've been saying throughout. Atwood accurately captures current trends in our relations to meat in different ways. I mean, she conveys the traditional tendency to view meat as power, meat as, saved for the elite, like Crake and his school, they get real meat at their beck and call, amongst other things. And we also see that it's more than just the power dynamic, right? I mean, that's a little bit deeper than whether we like the taste or not. But then there's also an argument to be made with the fluctuation of gastronomy, right? We're going, in our real life, we're going back to wanting to see that hidden referent, right? We want to see where our meat comes from. At least there's examples of that in our society now. Personally, I've not really picked up on this, but I mean, if you've seen any of those or read or encountered any of those 4 things we talked about as examples of our gastronomy reversing, then maybe you would have picked up on this. But that's the point of the article. It's saying that Atwood has, and she's magnified it to where it's a little bit more obvious. Because there is a feeling of reminiscing and nostalgia and just this yearning for something from this meat. You want it, you need it, you want to get back to what the earth once was. You need that nourishment, right? So, this was definitely one of the more interesting academic articles I've read or written about in a long time. So